Awesome.
Welcome to my coach interview with my good friend, otherwise known as Andrew Faull. This
Hmm.
interview today is all about digging deep into nutrition for tennis players and eating right. I'd like to introduce Andy before we start. So, Andy has been ranked as high as number one in Surrey and 16 in the UK. He competed throughout his childhood and started playing tennis at 7 years old. And he trained at Sutton, Reigate, and then Bromley for the AASE scheme. He studied psychology at Southampton University and is now a part-time tennis coach slash hitter in central London. And lastly, Andy has learned a lot from experimentation and other people to help increase his nutritional knowledge, which has led him to recently start coaching nutrition, fat loss, and business performance online full-time. So now it's time for the questions. Welcome, Andy, and I hope you're
Cool.
well.
Thanks for having me.
So first one, how can a tennis player fuel their body the right way?
So you definitely want, because if you're competing and you're training a lot, you're going to be breaking down your muscles quite a bit. So you definitely want to get like a good bit of protein in there. So stuff like eggs, chicken, beef, all those kind of meats. So you have the meats with the eggs. That's a good bit of protein. And then from the eggs and the meats, you're going to have good fats, right? And you need those sort of essential fats because you got fat soluble minerals and vitamins in those that you sort of need for your muscles. Um, Other things like veggies with different sort of minerals and vitamins in there. There's also the traditional train of thought when you're sort of like fueling your body is to go really high carbohydrates. When I was competing, when I was like younger, that's what everyone is taught, right? So you eat a ton of pasta, a ton of rice, breads, for that quick energy, quick carbohydrates. I don't believe in carbohydrates anymore. I remember when I was younger, I used to eat like a massive bowl of like pasta, like the night before a match.
Yep.
But I don't do that anymore for a couple of reasons. The first reason was I can remember whenever I'd eat like a big bowl of like pasta, a couple of hours after I would feel so sluggish, right? So when my mom would like, pick me up from school and she would take me to tennis, I would have a big bowl of pasta, and by the time we got to the tennis, I just wanted to sleep, right? And it's because when you eat so much carbohydrates, your blood sugars they shoot way up, and then your body produces insulin to bring it back down. But because it's shot so far up, it drops. It has this dramatic drop, right? And that's where you have that crash, so to speak. So I'd get to tennis and I'd be like, oh, I feel so like tired. I don't really want to play. And it's only through the adrenaline that I was able to like get back into it. So I'd sort of recommend keeping your sort of carbohydrates low strategically throughout sort of your training block and go more higher fats. You're going to get fats naturally from like chicken, steaks, and their eggs anyways. So you don't really have to focus. I don't believe you should focus mainly on sort of like pasta and rice anymore.
Okay.
And make sure you get the veggies in as well. So, especially the leafy greens.
No, it sounds
Yeah.
good because, yeah, like you mentioned, nutritionists or other coaches would always tell you about eating carbohydrates or, eating loads the night before and that sort of thing. And to have a different view and to have that come from the younger generation, the next gen, us, is quite important and fresh to hear, actually. And
Yeah.
there isn't one way of doing nutrition, but there is this way that you've just explained there as well. So I think that's great.
It's a change as well because I spent 10 years of my life just doing that, and it's only in the last 2 years or 2 3 years I've sort of made that change and sort of seen the benefits. So it's definitely, at first I was definitely it's probably rubbish, but I tried it and it works out really well. So
Cool.
that's why I've kept on it.
Hopefully the viewers can give that a go once activity
Yeah, definitely.
right? All right. So number two, should a tennis player make any differences on match day?
Yeah, so on match day, so One, if you ever do PE or if you're like a competitive player, you probably heard of carbohydrate loading, where you eat a ton of carbohydrates leading up to the match. So your glycogen stores are like really full. You go into the match like full of energy. I'd suggest throughout the training block, you keep your carbohydrates low. And then on the match day, the day before, then you strategically put your carbohydrates back in, right? Because what that does is it refuels you become fat adapted, so your body runs on fats a lot easier. But when you add carbohydrates back into the mix strategically, you're almost like a loaded gun, right? So you have even more energy. So when you put carbohydrates in, you have this burst of energy, but you want to put it in strategically, right? So you don't want to abuse it, because then the effects of it is just gonna reduce. So I've noticed when I'm eating carbohydrates all for the whole 4 weeks, when it comes to match day, I don't really feel that energized. But if I go sort of like keto for 3 weeks, and then just before the matches, I put carbohydrates back in, I've got this burst of energy. So I definitely think keep it low carb in training, and then the night before your match, then add carbohydrates back in.
Okay, cool. So number 3, third question, is hydration key for tennis?
Definitely you want to get your water in. Because you're going to be training and you're competing a lot, you're going to be sweating. You're going to be sweating a lot. And when you sweat, you're going to be losing all these electrolytes that your body sort of needs just to function, right? I'd say the key important part about hydrating yourself is making sure you hydrate yourself with mineral water, right? So you don't want to have, in the UK, we're fine. Most of our tap water does have some minerals. It's more in the States, but you want to sort of get these, because you see when you go into the shops, you get these bottles of water and it says mineral water, right?
Yeah.
And that means it's got all the electrolytes in it. So if you turn over and you look at it, it's got the potassium, the calcium, all of those electrolytes you need. Because when you sweat, you lose all of that. But if you're drinking tap water that doesn't have minerals in it, you're essentially just drinking water with no minerals. And that's what the hydration isn't exactly the water, it's the minerals in it. So if you're drinking water without minerals, you're not hydrating yourself. Exactly. So it's making sure that you do drink the water, but it's mineral water, right? So you want to replenish those electrolytes. So that's the key distinction.
Okay. And just like a little add-on to that, because obviously we're in this topic of hydration, what are your thoughts on like Lucozades or those sorts of drinks for tennis?
I mean, firstly, those Lucozades and Gatorades especially, when I was competing, I was drinking a lot of that. A lot of like Gatorades and Lucozades. Because we had like big boxes of them. When you actually look at the Lucozades, it's just a ton of sugar, right? That's all it really is. It's just sugar. And with those sort of companies that add like other sort of sweeteners and stuff that you don't really want. For a competitor, it's having just glucose isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you want to sort of keep it for the matches, right? So it's like your sort of trump card. It's something you add into the mix, but you don't want to add it into the mix all the time, because then you're screwing over your insulin levels. So you should almost treat it like almost like a drug, right? So when you need it, when you're like in that third set and it's tight, that's when you add it back in. Or any time you need that sort of quick burst, because that's what glucose is. It's a quick burst of energy, and then it's followed by a bit of a drop. So you don't want to just abuse it and use it all the time. You sort of want to use it in the matches. So if I were to go back, I would definitely save the Lucozades and the Gatorades more for second, third set, because if you use it too early, then you're gonna have that dip, right? That crash, that sugar crash, and you don't really want that.
Okay. So I guess you could maybe add that in as a difference on match day as well then.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be the same like those. You see those the gel sort of things you slurp up. That's pure glucose. So save it for when you're in those games where I need to win that game, and you get the quick burst of energy. You don't want to use it all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is great for not just performance players, but your club players as well, or your social players. Because again, they play their friendly matches, their league matches, their Aegon team tennis. And again, they can bring their Lucozades or their Gatorades or their, gels. And it's important that now that they know when to use them and when they're going to benefit them, rather than just taking them maybe because they look good or because they just
exactly
love
That's the thing. You just see because everyone drinks it, that you just think, oh, maybe I should drink it. I think Gatorade's main selling point was the fact that they had electrolytes. The thing you have to be careful with these sort of companies is it's usually like a copycat electrolyte, so it's not like a real electrolyte. So you're not exactly getting the benefit. You'll probably be better off if you're worried about the electrolytes. Be better off getting water and putting pink Himalayan salt in it, and that's all the electrolytes you need. Lucozade and Gatorade is more for the glucose and the sugar, for the burst of energy. That's all it really is for.
Okay, interesting. Let's move on to number 4. So we talked about a little bit what to drink or what a tennis player needs to drink during a match, but what does a tennis player need to eat during a match?
During a match, you see, because when I was competing, it's totally different to how I think now. Back when I was competing, stuffs like banana, same idea with the Lucozade, bananas, the gel drinks. Now I believe you shouldn't eat anything. I think you should be generally fasted in the match. I like to play my matches in sort of like a fasted state. Because when you're in a fasted state, your insulin levels drop, right? And because insulin is such a dominating hormone, when it's present, all the other hormones aren't getting used. So your human growth hormone, for example, when insulin drops, human growth hormone goes up, right? And the other thing is, in terms of your body, if you're not eating, you're looking for it, right? So what happens is you trigger your central nervous system and you become more focused, and you actually have more energy, right? So I teach this for busy entrepreneurs or busy professionals, right? And they have breakfast, and then by lunchtime they're like sluggish, right? And it's because they get that crash. So I tell them not to eat anything, and they actually have more energy and they're more focused. So I say in the matches, try not to eat anything. You don't want to be running around with stuff in your stomach, really. And you just more from my personal experience, you have less brain fog. You're more concentrated. That's the one thing I've noticed. But you definitely have stuff like banana and the gel drinks. Save it for those critical moments when you need them. But you don't want to have it throughout the match. Just save it. It's like your trump card. Keep it like that.
Okay.
Or if you do feel like a dip in concentration, that's when you have it. But generally, you don't really want to eat anything.
And you always experience as well, and I can guarantee you've seen it and heard it at tournaments as well. But you always have parents, egging the player or egging the child to eat the match. And there's never really a why to it. They just, I guess, maybe like you mentioned earlier, they see another parent do it who maybe has, and that player is, I don't know, number 1 in the country or something, and they feel that they can push that onto their player. But actually,
that's the thing when you have parents that are like that push, because I've seen so many parents that are like so fucking like so pushy like that. A lot of times, or like 99% of the times, those pushy parents aren't actually athletes or tennis players, so they don't actually know anything. So they're looking at other people and they're just copying them, thinking that because if they're doing well, then whatever we do that they do, then we'll do well as well.
Yeah.
Which I mean, sometimes it's viable, but not all of the time, I don't think, because everyone has sort of different individual needs, right? So you sort of have the same universal things that you do, but everyone has different individual needs that you sort of have to adjust for. And I think when you have that sort of mindset, it's very easy to just blindly think that that's the way to do it. even when things are going wrong, you still think, oh, that's the way, because if they're doing it, then it must work for us. So I've seen that happen where like the kids are just like falling apart and the parents are still pushing them with this sort of mindset. So I don't think it works all the time, but I think that's one of the reasons why they sort of push different things that you might think, I don't know.
I think what I'm liking so far about this is obviously you give so much of what you know already, but there's also things that the viewers and even me myself can try when we get back on the court. You know, stuff like trying not to eat anything during a match, for example. You know, something that is maybe not seen as you can do on the court. You know, you actually can. You can actually go and dedicate one of your friendly matches and eat nothing and see what happens, or you know, try that over 6 weeks or 6 matches, and see if it works for you, or even use that gel in your third set at 4-all, for example. You know, so this is cool that it's linking in, and it can be on court and not just off court stuff as well. I'm liking the way it's going. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely test things out and keep learning. Because you know, if I kept the mindset of just trying to just do whatever people were telling me to, I wouldn't have realized all the benefits I have now. You know? So it's about just trying new things. So.
And I think again, just adding, it's very good with tennis as well. You know, when you play tennis, you don't just have to be a professional tennis player. There's so many paths, and you can keep going in the sport for, you know, so many years. So this is great. Let's move on to number 5 then. So what piece or pieces of advice do you have for recovery?
Okay. Firstly, diet is key always. Make sure you get your potassium. Protein is probably the most important, because like I said earlier, when you're breaking down those muscles, you need protein to rebuild them, right? Potassium is also key. You need I think it's 47,000 milligrams of potassium a day. So that's like almost 7 handfuls of like leafy greens, vegetables.
Okay.
That's really important for sort of the muscles to work properly. In a very dumbed down way, potassium is for the muscles to work properly. Other sort of active things you can do, like ice baths are really good. We used to do that a lot. I remember there was when I was like really young, I used to get invited to all these like regional or national camps. When I was like 16, 17, that sort of stopped happening. But they had in the NTC, I'm pretty sure you've seen, like in the changing rooms, they've got that like big, it looks like a big square and it's deep.
Yep.
Right. They filled that up with like ice water. And I remember all of us boys were lining up just to get inside it because it was filled with ice. So the whole idea is like when you submerge yourself in that sort of sub-zero, like really, really cold, your blood vessels vasoconstrict, and it helps in a very dumbed down way. It helps and it accelerates your recovery, basically. So that's like a thing you can do at the end of the day or after a heavy training session, especially. It works really well. Things like also active recovery things like using a foam roller, stretching. Foam roller especially, I think, keeps you nice and loose and nimble, and it sort of moves the lactic acid, right? So after a heavy training session or like a really intense match, your body's gonna be full of lactic acid, not insulin, lactic acid. Yep. Your body's gonna be full of it, and that's when you start to feel a bit stiff, right? So you want to keep that moving. So you can use the foam roller just to keep you sort of not as stiff. So those are 2 ways you can actively recover. And the diet especially is going to keep you, is more sort of for long term as well.
Is there any like example foods or drinks or meals that you'd recommend when you're in that recovery phase?
As for foods, stuff like, because you want that protein in there, right? So stuff like chicken and eggs, a good steak, like a really, like when I say a good steak, I mean a good quality steak where it's sort of like pasture raised, where it's not the commercial garbage you normally get, because those commercial, they don't quite have the minerals because the animal is so unhealthy, it doesn't have the minerals that you need, right? So you want to definitely invest. I know it's a bit more in the way of money, but definitely goes a long way. Getting a pasture-raised, organic, grass-fed sort of steaks, maybe chicken. Stay away from the corn-fed chicken, especially, because I only found this out not too long ago. But corn-fed chicken, out of all the meats, it produces like an estrogenic response. Like it's a mimic estrogenic response where your body produces a bit more estrogen. And for someone who's competing, and especially for a guy, you don't really want excess estrogen, right? So you don't want to put on that excess fat and the excess hair. You want more sort of testosterone. So definitely stay away from corn-fed chicken. But that's pretty much it. It's really the meals. There's no like special drinks. It's really what you have in your meals, right? Just make sure you get that right. Make sure when you have the plate, a quarter of it is the meat. The other quarter is the eggs, 2 eggs. Eggs are really, really good. And then the other half is just vegetables, right? Because those vegetables are going to be those extra minerals and vitamins, especially those leafy greens. So stuff like kale, spinach is really good. Bok choy, anything that's sort of colorful, you sort of really want, because they will have the potassium that you need, because you need 47,000 milligrams of potassium a day. That's quite a lot. And then you're also going to have the vitamin C, vitamin E, different stuff as well. So
cool.
And you need that, yeah.
And I think that's good for, obviously performance players, but for the club players as well, just to have that, those examples and those simple foods as well, stuff like eggs.
Keep it simple. Yeah, exactly. It's more than the one thing. When I was younger, there was always like this special drink or special like those like energy tablets that you'd have to recover, but it's really what you have when you're having the meals. That's the most important part. There's nothing, you can't substitute the meal time. Right? That's the most important one. So
okay,
that's something I wish I knew before.
Yeah. And again, that's something that these guys can try as well. Focus more on the meal, like you said, rather than those other gimmicky things. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
okay.
Those gimmicky things are like it's an extra. It's like an ace. What do you call it? Like a ace in the sleeve kind of thing. It's like treat it like a drug. You don't want to abuse it.
Yeah, Cool. I had to ask this one. This is probably my favorite one. But why do tennis players eat bananas?
I think it's, well, when I was younger, it's the potassium in the bananas. The carbohydrate. It's the same as those gel drinks. It's the carbohydrates, right? It's the quick energy. So if you're feeling a bit sluggish in the match, you have a banana, boom, your blood sugars go back up, and so you're like, you're awake again. So I know when I was younger, my mom would always give me a banana. She would give me a ton of. I hated eating bananas. I honestly did. Like, she'd give me like 2 bananas, or like in between the sets, she would just walk over to our court and just like hand me a banana. I'm like, oh god. I'm like, but it's definitely the carbohydrates and it's the quick glucose, right? So in the matches, you don't have time to have a full-on meal, right? So you need something quick. Bananas generally aren't that heavy as well, so you can still run around quite a bit and not feel a bit full. So, But I hated them, but I still kind of ate them a little bit as well.
Is there any other like fruits that you could like replace for a banana if you weren't, like yourself, a fan of a banana?
I'd say anything that isn't too heavy, because again, you're going to be running around a lot. But any fruit will sort of do, I guess, because it's the fructose in it, the fructose and the carbohydrates. So fructose is just like sugar. It's fruit sugar. So but I can't think of much, but I think banana is the easiest because you just eat that. It's just one banana and you're good to go. Whereas like other fruits, it's like you have to eat the whole thing. And no, I think banana is probably the best out of all the fruits.
Yep. Okay.
Maybe an apple. I don't know, but I'm not too sure about that.
So let's move on to our last one then. Is calorie counting necessary for tennis players?
As a tennis player, we were never taught to calorie count. We were always taught to try and eat the calories because we're going to be losing a lot when we're exercising, but we were never taught to calorie count. That's more for weight loss because you want to go sort of in a deficit or in a surplus. You want to be mindful of your calories. But as a competing tennis player, it was something we never really did. You can sort of tell and judge just by the way you feel, right? So if you feel like you're a bit sluggish, or maybe your muscles start to ache, then maybe probably you're not having enough calories. So that's something you can implement and add a little bit more on your meals. But I don't think it's necessary. I think you can generally tell just by sort of listening to your body, right? So I don't think it's important at all.
Okay. There's actually one that I've missed out, so I'm going to go back to that one.
Yeah, cool.
Would you recommend an athlete nutrition plan for tennis players?
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely recommend that. I'll definitely recommend just learning a bit more, because for any competitive player, nutrition is so key because it's your fuel. It's like your building blocks. And you have to rely on your body a lot, right? And your body needs those nutrients coming in, it needs the minerals coming in, it needs the vitamins coming in just to function properly. I think definitely in the way of macros as well. So like fats and carbohydrates as just like the main sort of like fuel source, because you need the energy. It's just to sort of compete and run around. Because if you don't have the energy and the food, then you're not going to perform quite as well on the court. And also there are different little things where, say if your muscles are starting to ache, well, if you know, well, that could be a potassium problem or magnesium problem, you can add a bit more of that into your diet. Yeah. And then in the next few days, you're feeling better. So definitely important to sort of invest in that sort of knowledge or invest in that sort of coaching.
Yeah. And I think, again, I did a interview or Q&A with a strength and conditioning coach the other day, and we were talking about something similar, like coming up with a plan. And he was saying, it's like similar to what you just said there, it doesn't have to be so strict and just one, you follow this and that's it. Like you said there, if you feel like you need something extra in one department, then the next day or whenever you can add that little bit of extra in. So I think, again, tennis is always seen in all areas, technical, tactical, physical, mental, that one way or no way, or it's so detailed, but actually you can adapt it to yourself. It doesn't have to be so to the point.
Because tennis is quite a lonely sport sometimes. You're really on your own. So you're your own accountant, your own psychologist, your own nutritionist, your own strength and conditioning coach, especially when you compete in, because when you're at the tournaments, you very rarely have your coach there. So just knowing these things can really come in handy and save you. So I've known a couple of times where I've been at tournaments and I've just felt like, I was just like, my mental fog is just insane. And then what I did was that could have been a lack of salt, a lack of electrolytes. So I added a little bit of Himalayan salt into my water, and then the next day I'm feeling a lot better. So it can definitely save you sometimes. And then just noticing different sort of things going wrong, you can sort of regulate that if you have the knowledge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool. So that's a wrap. Good stuff. Thank you for joining me this week on my coach interview, Andy. I couldn't have done it without you, of course. And thank you to all of you at home for watching. Be sure to tune in for my next episode, and all the best.
Cheers, man.
Thank you.